Hey everybody, welcome back to Football Talk with Vinny. So obviously by the title of the video, in today's video, I'm just gonna go over the trade that just happened between the New York Jets and the Carolina Panthers. So if you haven't heard by now, the Carolina Panthers and Jets made a trade today. The Jets traded Sam Darnold to the Carolina Panthers. In exchange, they got a 6th round pick in this year's draft, and then a 2nd and a 4th round pick in the 2022 draft. So obviously this is big news for not only both teams, but also just the draft in general. So I'm gonna start with the Jets' perspective on this. So obviously you drafted Sam Darnold about 3 years ago, so you're already moving on from him. So with having the 2nd overall pick in the draft, it's pretty likely now that they're going to use that pick on a quarterback, right? I think a lot of people thought they were going to, but there was some people saying, hey, like if you can get a bunch of draft capital for that number 2 pick and maybe keep Sam Darnold and put some talent around him, you know, he might be able to be more successful than the situations you had put him in over the course of the past 3 seasons. Now, obviously, all of that doesn't matter from the Jets' perspective on this trade specifically, right? If you are to take Zach Wilson with the number 2 overall pick, you're essentially, right, resetting your quarterback salary cap, right? Sam Darnold was going into the 4th year of his deal, so you are going to have to either accept or decline that 5th year option, which I believe makes him around like the 10th highest paid player or the average of the top 10 highest paid players at the position. Or give him a big contract extension. Now with drafting Zach Wilson, or at least presumptively is going to be Zach Wilson at number 2, you now have a full 4 years before you have to decide on that. And then obviously, you know, again, it's new GM, new head coach. So Sam Darnold is no longer their guy. You know, a lot of times when you hire a new GM and a new coach, you want to bring in kind of your guy at the quarterback position, right? That's just the way it works in the NFL. As a GM and a head coach, you're essentially tied to your quarterback. So if you did not draft the quarterback that you inherit, a lot of times teams will draft a different quarterback that very next year, you know, because you want to bring in the guy that you believe, hey, I'm going to ride or die with this person. So you certainly can't fault the Jets for making that move. I am from the opinion that Sam Darnold is a very talented quarterback, and he just did not have enough to be successful in New York. But again, I understand the perspective from the new GM and the new head coach. As for what you got back in return, right, you got a 6th round pick this year, so not really much, but you did get a 2nd and a 4th next year. So at least you got 2 decent picks to where 1 pick at least, even if the Panthers play well next year, you're going to get a top 60 pick, you know, and again, if the Panthers are not so great next year, it could be a potentially top 50 or even a top 40 pick. You have a chance to draft a startable caliber player in that 2nd round next year. And then the 4th round pick just gives you more draft capital to use. And obviously with the Jets, I want to say it's something around 21 picks they have over the course of the next 2 years after this trade. So if you are the Jets in either this year's draft or next year's draft, you can now move up and take, you know, specific players maybe in the 1st or 2nd round that you think are going to be good. You know, from the Jets' perspective, they have, I think, the 2nd pick, and I think it's 26. I think they pick at 26, which was Seattle's pick. But again, if you're the Jets, that doesn't really stop you from trading up into the middle of the 1st round and maybe drafting another player, right? Maybe if one of those tackles start to slip, if you're the Jets, you maybe move up 5, 6, 7, 10 spots, and you try to take that 2nd or 3rd tackle off the board. Or, you know, again, you could even just trade up into the back end of the 1st round and essentially take 3 1st round picks, right? Because again, the difference between picking a player in the 1st and all the other rounds is you get that option for that 5th year, right? Which is, you know, could be huge, right? If you ask the Baltimore Ravens, right, who took Lamar Jackson with the 32nd pick in that draft, if they had traded up to the 33rd pick, which is the 1st pick in the 2nd round, and took Lamar Jackson, they would not be able to give Lamar that 5th year option, which again, the way he's been playing, it's going to be a big option because now you only pay him the average of the top 10 salaries, whereas when his contract is up, he's probably going to be the highest or 2nd highest paid quarterback, you know, or maybe the 3rd. He's going to be up there when his contract is up. So from the Jets' perspective, I really like the move. You do have, like I said, a lot of draft capital now. You know, whether you think Sam Darnold can make it or not, at this point, if you're the Jets, doesn't matter, right? You are essentially starting a full rebuild. You're going to restart at quarterback and essentially reset the rest of the roster. Now, let's look at it from Carolina's perspective. I absolutely love this move for Carolina. Like I said, think that Sam Darnold is a very good quarterback that was just in a very bad situation. And with that being said, I think he goes to a much better situation where you have arguably the best running back in football in Christian McCaffrey. You know, you have a solid receiving core, right? You have a defense that played very well last year. So if that defense can get some stops, it puts less pressure on the offense to have to produce at a high level in order to win a ball game. And I think if you watch Sam Darnold in New York, yes, it wasn't great, but he did have some moments where he did play very well. And you could see that, hey, if he could be more consistent, if you could put better weapons around him, you know, he can be a quality starting quarterback. And again, if you're the Panthers, you didn't really give up much. You know, you essentially gave up a second or fourth round pick. You know, with how hard it is to hit on picks in the draft, especially guys in the second, fourth, or even sixth rounds, if Sam Darnold could be even a little more consistent, he can give you something at the quarterback position that it would be hard to find in the second or fourth round. Now, obviously, as it comes to the NFL draft, a lot of people had the Carolina Panthers either A, trading up for a quarterback or just taking a quarterback that falls to them at 8. So I don't believe they're in the market now to draft a quarterback, especially early in the first round at this point. So I think just from really looking at their needs and what I think they could use to improve the football team, right? Obviously, if a guy like Penei Sewell drops them at 8, I think they would be ecstatic to take the top tackle in the draft and improve that offensive line. I think even if I was the Panthers, even if he's gone, I guess if maybe like a Jalen Waddle drops or Devontae Smith drops to 8, maybe you take him or you take the best wide receiver. Also, really another idea for Carolina is maybe a quarterback needy team that is not sure if Denver would take a quarterback at 8, right? Maybe if a guy like Justin Fields is there at 8 or a Mac Jones, you know, if one of those guys are there at 8, maybe you trade back with a team like New England that trades up to 8. Maybe you pick up an additional first round pick for next year. And then if you drop back to like say 15, 14, 13, you just draft the second or third best tackle in the class at 14 or 13. Plus you pick up an additional draft capital for next year. So I really like the move for the Carolina Panthers. Obviously with Sam Darnold's contract, it does put pressure to have to make sure that Sam Darnold starts very early right away. I think if you're the Panthers, even though Teddy Bridgewater is going to make $20-ish million this year, you're going to have to start Sam Darnold because you're going to have to decide on that 5th-year option. And if he doesn't start any games this year, it's going to be almost impossible to pick up the option and just pay him when you haven't seen him in a live game. But I think the way that they're building their team, right, and even Teddy Bridgewater, when he signed the contract, it wasn't like franchise quarterback money, so he knew there was a possibility that they could draft a quarterback or trade for someone and bring someone in to compete for the job. So if you're Teddy Bridgewater, again, you're just having to compete for your job. And again, if you're Sam Darnold, you know, if you could beat out Teddy Bridgewater and start some games, and, you know, maybe it might be a situation where both quarterbacks start 5+ games for them this year. You know, it's really funny. I was actually in the process of editing my draft video when I got the message and the notifications on my phone about the actual trade, which is a little unfortunate for me because I actually had in my mock draft, which was going to come out, I had projected that the Jets were going to trade the number 2 pick to another team, right? So I was from the mindset that if the Niners moved up from, I think it was 11 or 12, all the way up to 3, and they gave up what they gave up, I thought that the Jets could trade out of the number 2 pick and get even more and use all that draft capital to put a great talented team around Sam Darnold. So obviously with this trade going down, that obviously is not really going to be possible now. So I'm going to have to kind of redo that video. So that video is going to be delayed about a day or so. So it should be out pretty soon though. And then also the last point I wanted to make after talking about the Jets and the Panthers is how it affects the rest of the teams in the draft, right? Because I think a lot of people thought that the Panthers were in the market for a quarterback. So if you know now that the first 3 picks are all going to be quarterbacks, right? If you're a team like New England, right, you don't really have as much of a need to trade ahead of Carolina at this point because, again, you don't think Carolina is going to take a quarterback. So now if you're a team, you may, you know, not have as much a sense of urgency to try to trade up to get that quarterback. But that's going to be it for this video. Just want to kind of go over the trade, my initial thoughts on the trade, also my first initial reactions on how that's going to change the draft. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. If you did like the video, make sure to hit the like button. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It does help the channel out a lot. But that's it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.